Love that intro music. That got my blood pumping right there. Well, hello once again. This is Kristian Dyer here, and you are listening to the Red Bulls Insider podcast on MSG Networks. We got a really interesting show today. We are going to have the man, the myth, the legend, Alexi Lalas will be joining us on the phone in a few moments, and we got a lot of things to talk about with Alexi. Obviously, he was on the Fox Sports 1 call this past weekend, Sunday afternoon at Red Bull Arena, where we saw the New York Red Bulls go down 3-1 at home to the LA Galaxy. And that's something we haven't seen in over 13 months. A Red Bulls team in the regular season losing at home. It was a 19-game unbeaten stretch during that point, dating back to last April. 16 wins, 3 ties in those 19 matches. And let me tell you what, the LA Galaxy came in with an ideal game plan. It was the same game plan that the Columbus Crew used in 2015 in the playoffs, knocking the Red Bulls out of the playoffs. It was the same plan used last year by the Montreal Impact, who came into Red Bull Arena and knocked this very same team out of the playoffs. And it's a plan that's counter-made for the high press. And we know that Jesse Marsch, Red Bulls head coach, 2 years ago instituted this high press. And what the high press does is run at another team's back line, at their holding midfielders, try to create not just turnovers, but errant long balls, a switching of possession. And why this is so effective is so many MLS teams have back lines that the players aren't necessarily comfortable on the ball. They're not great passers. They can knock it around, but really they want to get the ball as quickly as possible to the midfield and then just kind of go back into their defensive shape. And what a team like the Galaxy is able to do is they have players along their back line who maintain and hold possession well, who can play a through ball, but can also switch fields. And that's what the Galaxy did very well. Their long balls up top to the forwards were effective in being able to maintain possession, and they switched fields, which allowed them to beat and take out 4 or 5 Red Bulls pressing players, letting them move into the final third with numbers and with a great deal of authority. And while LA had just about 30% possession in this game, 32%, it was effective possession. When they had the ball in the final third, they moved well with numbers. They had a numerical advantage. On the wings, they were able to isolate the Red Bulls defenders in 1v1 situations, and that's spelled a fair amount of trouble. So we'll be talking with Alexi Lalas about that. Going to ask him some questions about his time as a general manager of the New York Red Bulls. He was the first ever GM of this franchise, and also maybe touch on some issues around MLS, dealing with the national team. So it's going to be great to get Alexi on the phone. So stay tuned. It is the Red Bulls Insider Podcast on MSG Networks. And it is our pleasure now to be joined here on the Red Bulls Insider broadcast with Fox Sports analyst, the one, the only, former MetroStars player, former Red Bulls GM, and about a man of about a million other attributes, Alexi Lalas. Alexi, thanks for joining us on the phone today.
It's my absolute pleasure, and we got a long history together. All good.
Checkered. Something's checkered.
No, it's not checkered at all. It's wonderful. It's part of the fabric of American soccer history. So congratulations on all your success, and it's a pleasure to be here.
It is. I mean, we go back when you were a player and I was a ragtag fan hanging over the railings, saying some unflattering things about you, and we do go back.
You were just one of many that said such things, but I recall fondly all the different things. At least you said it with a level of wit and a wink and a nod, unlike other folks that probably meant every word.
And usually with a faux British accent. That was my Anglophile era, I think.
Well, we know that it's not authentic unless it has that.
No. Green Street hooligans and all that. Anyway, we have way too much to talk about, and we can go down memory lane a little bit later on. But want to hit you up as you were part of the Fox Soccer broadcast, or the Fox Sports broadcast that was at Red Bull Arena on Sunday. That 3-1 loss brought an end to the Red Bulls' 19-game regular season unbeaten streak at the arena. What were your takeaways from that match? Sasha Kljestan's calling it an outlier. The team seems a little angry about it and said that wasn't the true Red Bulls team that we saw on display in that loss to the Galaxy.
Well, I would think that Sasha Kljestan would say that because he's hoping that it is, and he's hoping that it's an anomaly, as I'm sure Jesse Marsch and the entire team is, because it's not that the Red Bulls can't lose. They were obviously coming off of 2 losses in a row away. We know how difficult it is away, but they've been very good at home. And they just came out, and I guess if you're going to end a streak at home, end it with a bang, or I guess in this case it would have been a thud. But that was something that we haven't seen a lot in the past. And Jesse Marsch could do nothing. There was nothing that he could do from a personnel perspective or a tactical perspective to change it. It was one of those days when the soccer gods said, you know what? It is not going to happen for you, Red Bulls, no matter what you do. And Sasha Kljestan, saying that, once again, he better be hoping that this is not a trend and that they can put this out of their system as quickly as possible.
They say you're never as good as your best game. You're never as bad as your worst game. I rewind a few weeks ago, that match against DC United, 2-0. Red Bull probably could have walked out of the arena with maybe 4 or 5 goals. It was an emphatic, one-sided match from the Red Bulls, probably their best of the season. Last Sunday was as poor as could be, even though they held nearly 70% possession. Which one is more accurate of where this Red Bulls team is right now, Alexi? 4 or 5 weeks ago against DC, or what we just saw Sunday afternoon?
Well, it's probably the way that you described it, somewhere in the middle. I don't think that this is a horrible team by any stretch of the imagination. I think that this is a continually competitive team, but this is not the best Red Bull team that we have seen. And it's gone through some changes, as you know, whether it's the Dax McCarty situation, where they will say that they don't care about it, but they do care from a practical perspective. It has changed, and sometimes when you got a really well-oiled machine, you change 1 or 2 parts, and you might not realize how important they were until after the fact. Now, look, they can go on and have success without Dax McCarty. I get that. But you also look back the last couple of years when they were a juggernaut and everything was functioning perfectly. It was obviously Bradley Wright Phillips up top scoring goals, Sasha Kljestan underneath with his incredible vision and his assisting. But they also had guys like Grella and Sam who were having career years. With that personnel change, I think is concerning going forward. The whole Sean Davis thing that didn't work out at the beginning of the year, now he gets back into the lineup. But the reason why he gets back into the lineup is Tyler Adams, who I think has been a wonderful, it's not a surprise, but a wonderful addition. You know, that's important. They got guys like Aaron Long. So there is still the way they want to play hasn't necessarily changed with that pressing. But I think 1 or 2 little things and a little bit of timing that's not there, if you do it for a team like Red Bull that relies so heavily on a system of play, and 1 or 2 players aren't necessarily doing it on a consistent basis, it can be problematic.
Is Tyler Adams the answer there to replace Dax McCarty, or is this a position where maybe the summer transfer window Red Bull might need to look either within the league or perhaps overseas for an answer to get that number 6, that deep-lying midfielder who can clean things up in front of a back 4 that's been in constant flux this year?
I think that in this day and age, when teams talk about matriculating young talent, and it's important from a business perspective and a developmental perspective to have the academies and to have USL teams, and I get that. But sometimes it's hard and it's dangerous to say, well, this guy is really good here, and we're going to bring him up, and automatically he's going to be great. And do you have the time to give a younger player to have them figure it out? And I'm not sure whether the Red Bulls want to give that time to players. Well, I think they want to, but can they do it? I think they're very, very happy with Tyler Adams, and I think he's going to pay dividends right now. But keep in mind that this is, all the talk was about Sean Davis, and it didn't quite translate initially. And he might come good later on, but the best laid plans and all, they don't always work out. And when you're talking about development, if you're not playing the exact same system, and I know that there is vertical integration when it comes to the Red Bulls, but when you take somebody out of a team where he is functioning well and put it into another team, albeit in the same club, sometimes it takes time and sometimes it doesn't work out. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily did anything bad, but you might have to go out there on the market and find somebody else, because this is still the New York Red Bulls. All right, this is not a small market team, and this, despite their philosophy and their change in philosophy over the last few years, this is still in the New York metropolitan market, and they need to win, and they need to be perceived as doing the things in order to win.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you about. And you mentioned in the broadcast the perception about this team. It is a team really without superstars, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But as a former general manager of the Red Bulls, you know this is a tough market.
Sure. And look, and in a previous time, we would have said, yeah, well, you had Jeter's game going on, and you had Metallica playing, and all these different things. Well, look, this is New York. Welcome to the New York metropolitan area. There's always going to be something else big, and many times something else bigger going on. But that no longer can be an excuse. I often tell people that I think Red Bull Arena is the best stadium in MLS when it's full. But as soon as it's not full, for whatever reason, it loses its luster very, very quickly. And it was silent the other day. And it's got to be better. And it can be better, and I hope that it will be better. But it was not a great display on or off the field from the Red Bulls on that Sunday.
Yeah. Did you have a Red Bull before this podcast? You're a little fired up today, Alexi.
I do not partake in any type of stimulant when it comes to caffeine or a energy drink or anything like that. So this is all natural. And look, I have a passion. I have a belief in the league. This is a team that I played for. This is a team that I worked for. Once again, I'm not telling people how to do their job. I recognize that it is incredibly difficult, and the men and women that work each and every day to sell these teams in MLS, it is a thankless job at times, and it's an incredibly difficult and challenging job. But you know what? You sign up for the gig. And when you're a player for the Red Bull or when you're working for Red Bull, you understand that you have this incredible stadium, and there's going to be challenges, but you got to find a way to get people in there. One way is to have a great team. They have had a good team, but as we mentioned before, they went away from the big signing and the big money, and that was not without risk, because this is still New York, and New York, like Los Angeles, they're accustomed to having sexy type of signings and big money and big, bold, arrogant type of plays when it comes to their entertainment. So it worked out well in terms of the last couple of years because they've been consistently a good team, but in a very different way. And it was a strategic play. It's not without risk, as I said. It doesn't make them necessarily the most interesting team, and relative to other entertainment that exists out there, sometimes it pales in comparison. But you know what? They were winning.
I just want to pivot away while we have you for a couple more minutes, and then we have Alexi Lalas from Fox Sports on the phone right now. Alexi called the game on Sunday at Red Bull Arena and played formerly for this franchise and first general manager in Red Bull's history. But I want to ask you about the national team, Alexi. Is this a better national team now under Bruce Arena than Jurgen Klinsmann, someone you were very critical of during the final few months of his tenure as national team head coach?
I think it is better because I think it's more organized. I think it's more efficient. I think it's more realistic. And I think it's more comfortable. Having said all of that, I actually didn't think that a change needed to be made after the first two games. I thought that the U.S. team would still qualify in the Hex. They looked at it and they said it's an emergency situation. Fine. Who are you going to get? Bruce Arena. I thought it was the logical choice. Bruce Arena is not going to change the way we think about soccer, but he is going to come in and very quickly suss out the situation, which is what he did. He's going to put players in positions to succeed. He's going to keep them in comfort zones so they are comfortable playing in the position and the way that the team plays, and I think that they have done that. But look, he has been charged with getting this team back on course. First two games went well. Next two games are coming up here. So it's going to be interesting to see how the continued course correction, if you will, of this team happens under Bruce Arena. But I do think that it's better right now, and certainly after the last two games, it's better than it was the first two games of the hexagonal.
Oh, but a change had to be made. I mean, Jurgen, I know, and we all ballyhooed this Copa America performance. He didn't beat a team that the U.S. hasn't beaten consistently in the past 15 years. The way they played against Colombia was embarrassing. Argentina was embarrassing. Colombia again was embarrassing. Did you see enough from Jurgen to say that, well, he's developing a product that we may take some bumps now in 2018 and beyond, but things are being built in the right direction? You were comfortable with what you saw on the field, that you didn't think a change had to be made at that moment?
No, I was comfortable that the U.S. would qualify for the World Cup. And if that's all that you cared about, then fine. I think it would still happen under Jurgen Klinsmann. I have never been comfortable with the direction that the team was heading. I think that there should have been a change. First off, just from a practical standpoint, I think it's difficult to go through multiple cycles for a coach. So I think that a change should have happened after the 2014 World Cup. Thank you, Jurgen, for everything that you've done. After that Belgian game, we're going to go in a different direction. You have done no harm, and in some cases, I can argue that you have evolved the team, and you have asked questions that either we haven't asked before or we don't want to answer, and in that sense, you have helped. You've identified some players, and thank you very much for your time, and off we go. To continue that cycle, I thought was problematic, and I think that ultimately it got stale, and it got stale very, very quickly, and a change ultimately, if you were talking about doing something different, then a change needed to be made. But like I said, qualifying for the World Cup for the United States under Bruce Arena or under Jurgen Klinsmann should never be out of reach. But the Federation thought that it was an emergency situation, and I can respect that type of view, because it's not about getting to the World Cup. It's about doing well in the World Cup ultimately for a U.S. team that plays in CONCACAF, where 3 of the 6 teams go, and actually possibly 4 if you go into the playoffs.
2002, the U.S. made the quarterfinals. Since then, best results have been second round. With Bruce Arena at the helm, I know that there's a lot of things in flux with groups and health and player form. Is this the team that can make the quarterfinals again?
Yes. I took Jurgen Klinsmann to task a few years ago before the 2014 World Cup because he wouldn't say that the team was going to the World Cup to win it. Bruce Arena hasn't said that either, and I would take him to task. There is nothing wrong, whether it's 2014 or 2017 or 18, for the United States national team to approach a World Cup with the objective of winning it, okay? Look, the U.S. has talent. The U.S. has a history. The U.S. has experience. The U.S. has good players. Every team that has won a World Cup has all of that, also needs a little bit of luck here and there, and we understand that. Are you going to go put all of your money on the U.S. winning the World Cup in 2018? No. Is it completely out of the realm of possibility of ever happening? No. Things can happen in this game. I think that Bruce Arena right now looks at this as an incredible opportunity. I think it's unfinished business with what he did in 2002, which we applaud. I think he can do better. I think he recognizes that he will have more talent and certainly more depth probably at his disposal. But I think Bruce really is going to relish this opportunity to have one more bite at that World Cup apple. And if his history is any indication, some interesting things could happen. But he also recognizes that come the World Cup, he's done. This is not a long-term hire. This is a short-term fix. I think he understands and accepts that and has no problem with that. The next coach of the national team after that World Cup, I think, is really going to be interesting because he or she is going to be given the mandate of doing some bigger things and doing that change and living up to that change in a way that Jurgen Klinsmann, while he might have talked about, I don't think ever lived up to.
Who do you think is on the short list? Who would be your candidate to replace Bruce?
Look, I think you've got guys like Oscar Pereja. I think the guys that are local, let's say, because there's going to be names from around the world that are going to look at it. You're going to have players like, I think even a guy in New York, I think Jesse will be on short lists for people, Peter Vermes, a lot of the usual suspects that you see. Maybe if Christ gets back on course with Orlando, he might get back into the mix. All of these different people that we've talked about now for years are going to be on that list. And then an array of people that are overseas, and whether it's, Roberto Martinez, who now has taken over Belgium and maybe looking for another international type of thing, or an older person, an older coach that's been around for a long time, You're going to have, your foreign managers that look at it as a real opportunity and an exciting adventure, in the same way that Tata Martino over in Atlanta looked at coming to MLS as an adventure and an exciting prospect.
Who would you pick? Who would be the Alexi Lalas seal of endorsement?
Look, I really think that someone like Peter Vermes is a smart guy, and I would have no problem with Peter Vermes coaching the national team.
You mentioned a he or a she. Do you think we're at the point where maybe a woman could be head coach of the U.S. men's national team?
I don't think you're doing your country a service, and I don't think you're doing your due diligence if you don't incorporate anybody that you think could be successful into that process. And I think it really has to be a process. I look back at my time where I was hiring and firing coaches, and if I had to do anything, I would have taken more time and demanded that I take more time to really scour and to really go out there and make it a process where I had as much information as I possibly could, and then made the best informed decision. And sometimes we don't do that.
Well, let me take you back here, Alexi, and we appreciate you taking time. Final question. Let's take you back to that time when you were hiring and firing coaches. Let's say you're making decisions for this current Red Bulls team. What would you be doing this summer transfer window? Let's get you back into Red Bulls land. Final question.
Well, look, some of their signings have worked out. Look, I think whether it's the Matt Miazga factor or Aurelian Colin, who's now hurt and is in and out of the lineup. You talked about that back four. I think getting some competition and some consistency back there is important. So I'd be looking for a defender. I'm not telling Jesse or anybody else anything that they don't know, or I guess it's Dennis now. I don't know how the hierarchy really works now after what happened over the last year. We talked earlier about that central part of midfield. I think that they're solid there. Felipe, who I'm sure people will look at, I think is solid. He's not a complete game changer, and he's not the best player in the world, but neither is anybody in that midfield other than, I think, Sasha Kleshin, who is irreplaceable. And I just love the way that he plays and his, not just his consistency, but his ability to be clinical and to not waste any movement or touch. I really love that about him, and I think he's really important going forward, regardless of who's around him.
Alexi, what game are you calling this weekend for Fox Sports?
I am off to the balmy 93, I think it was, degrees of Orlando, Florida. Orlando is hosting NYCFC. Orlando has been wonderful at home under Jason Kreis this year. They've gotten, I think, 16 of 18 possible points at home. And they got NYCFC that we know is up and down, having lost last night in, RSL. So that NYCFC team, which I really have a lot of respect for because they play in a certain way, and come hell or high water and plenty of risk, Patrick Vieira says this is who we are, and there's very few teams in the league that actually not just talk about it, but do it, even when faced with moments where the easy way is there to be pragmatic and to go against it. They double down on it, so I like that.
All right, well, Alexi Lalas, Fox Sports analyst, looking forward to hearing you on the call in Orlando. Appreciate all the time and the insights you gave us, and hope you'll hop on again with us sometime this summer.
Well, look, as a guy who many, many years ago came out to the great state of New Jersey, and my dad kicked me out at Exit 9 off the Turnpike, and I spent 4 wonderful years in New Brunswick at Rutgers, and then was able to play for the MetroStars, and then, as you mentioned, was the GM for the MetroStars, and then the transition to Red Bull. There's a piece of my heart that is always in New Jersey and in that New York metropolitan area. So we all want this to work out. We all want this to go great guns, and we all want the best for all of the teams in New York that support soccer, and the people that are there that don't necessarily kick a ball like yourself, that are as important as any of us, that get a lot of the credit for the evolution of soccer. So keep up what you're doing, my man, and it's always a pleasure, and we'll talk again later.
Appreciate it, Alexi. Thanks so much. Alexi Lalas giving us some real good insight and some real good thoughts. Thanks, Alexi.
Anytime.
Wow, that was a fired up, non-caffeinated, according to Alexi Lalas here on the Red Bulls Insider Podcast on MSG Networks. I mean, great stuff from Alexi, really diving into the loss on the weekend, and such a frustrating loss for the Red Bulls. And I think you got the sense from Alexi, and it's certainly a point that I would agree with, that this is a Red Bulls team that, this certainly was far from their best showing on Sunday, but it was a team that, is probably just a piece or two away from being able to get back to where they were last year, winning the Eastern Conference title. Keep in mind, the Red Bulls started 1-6 last year, so this start is already ahead of where they were in 2016. And it's a team that I think maybe is relying this year or trying this year to once again get hot August, September, October, and be a team that doesn't fade in the playoffs, but has built up some depth and maybe relying on a couple additions, certainly the back line. And I'm willing to bet there's going to be a creative player who might be in the mix, whether that's within MLS or perhaps on the international transfer market, that the Red Bulls are going to be eyeing up to come in and be a difference maker. Now, we've all seen how July and August transfers don't necessarily translate within the league. It took Thierry Henry the better part of a half season to really get acclimated into MLS. And then 2011, his first full year in the league, took a few games and then really started to turn things on, and he became such a catalyst for that Red Bulls team. And throughout the league, there are a lot of players who their first half season in the league, one signing in the summer, have struggled. They have to get fitness, they have to get acclimated to the level and standard of play, the quality of play, and also the travel and so many other things that they benefit from a full off season and then a preseason, and the next year they can certainly get more fully assimilated into a roster. So I think that it is a little bit of a dangerous scenario the Red Bulls are playing here, but they've got to roll the dice. They need an attacking piece too, and however that manifests itself is that a number 10 player, allowing Sacha Kljestan to drop back, perhaps play a bit more of a holding role, a role very similar to what he played in Belgium with great success with Anderlecht, a Champions League team. Maybe a role that brings a little bit more creativity to the field because it gets Sacha on the field along with a number 10. Or the Red Bulls going to be looking for a wide player, someone either to complement a Daniel Royer on one side or a Mike Grella on the other side. They may be looking to get a winger like an Alessandrini, who we saw Sunday at Red Bull Arena, who was so devastating there on the wing. So it's going to be certainly fun summer for the Red Bulls. There's a lot of flexibility this team has with allocation money, with salary cap space, and a lot of things we're going to be talking about in future editions of the Red Bulls Insider.